Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Don't Tell Me How to Fan. My name is Josh Albrecht, and with me, as always, is my pal, John Taylor. John, how are you today?
I'm okay, Josh. Honestly, after the game last night, I was more just annoyed at the Packers and the Bucks losing yesterday, both in pretty disappointing fashion. That
Yeah, double
um,
whammy.
double whammy, and I definitely, I don't think I was feeling some of the overreaction takes that I've been seeing on the internet today in terms of both teams, but it's just a double gut punch, as it were.
Yeah.
But that'll happen, I
So
suppose.
yesterday, the Packers season ended. They lost to the Eagles 22-10. And I mean, they were in it for a little bit, but they probably shouldn't have been.
Hmm.
And and so it all comes to an end. My final thought at the end of the game, just kind of looking at everything, was I thought it was a little unfortunately poetic of how the season started and how it ended. It was against the same team,
Mm-hmm.
and in both situations, it wasn't that team was at their best.
No.
They were beatable, and yet the Packers beat themselves. And the fact that it happened in week one and then in the first playoff game um, is kind of telling of
Mm-hmm.
this whole season and with this whole team. We will in future episodes kind of do a whole season recap and probably go more in depth on our final thoughts on players and what's next for the Packers and all that other stuff. But I mean, right off the bat, John, the the kickoff, the kickoff fumble that
Yeah.
immediately turns it over to the Eagles. I'm immediately on Twitter seeing people going, "That wasn't a fumble, or he recovered the fumble. It should be a Packers ball. That should have been a penalty." All this other stuff. In the game of football, rarely am I someone who blames the refs
Mm-hmm.
for a loss. I will blame an umpire for not calling balls and strikes more than I will a ref for missing a call
Yeah.
in a football game. And so I'm not going to do it here. There were
Yeah.
there were multiple calls throughout that game that I didn't agree with, but that's not the reason why the Packers lost.
Yeah. I think we've talked about this in other games. I can't remember which one it was. I remember saying, like, I do not like blaming the refs because I just think there's so much stuff the team could have done to not make it come down to a play call.
Yep.
But specifically yesterday, it's the first play of the game. Like, when people were like, well, the game's done, they fumbled on the opening drive. It's like, well, there truthfully is the maximum amount of time left in this game. There's been one play. You know what I mean? It's like there is another universe where a different team just stops them and gets the ball back, and it's no harm, no foul. I think the thing that got sobering very quickly in that game was just the realization that they were not able to get out of their own way, like you had mentioned, because I don't think the Eagles are a superior football team. I just think they're more
They
poised
weren't
for
yesterday.
the moment. Yeah, absolutely not. So,
and I think to your point and what you were saying, it was for me, because I usually go to that negative place before you do. Was it was the second time the offense was on the field, not even the first time, right? So it wasn't like, okay, we're starting 7-zip, this isn't great, and then 3 and out, we get the ball and we don't do anything with. Okay, that's not
right.
good. Even then, I was like, this is still early. This is fine.
Three plays, 2 yards to
Right.
Start off with a pass for some reason. I don't know if they were trying to break tendency. I think I mentioned last week that LaFleur in these games has always kind of gone against tendency and showed different looks. And I would assume that that's maybe what they were trying to get at. But yeah, they went pass incomplete. Jacobs, 2 yards before tackled, and then a Jordan Love passing complete deep left to Dontavian Wicks, right? And one of those was one that should have been intercepted by CJ Gardner-Johnson, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, they never, I don't know what happened. I don't understand how this offense goes from scoring 30 plus points a clip with a pretty good mix, when we're talking about the Seahawks game, that stretch of run where they look really good on offense, where they were beating everybody. Yeah. By a lot. even in the losses, the offense was not the issue. But yeah, I mean, really worrisome over the last 3 games. So they carried whatever momentum or lack thereof. And so it's disappointing. Yeah, some interesting conversations coming out of the exit interviews. I don't know if you've caught any of that.
I did, and I want to get to that a little bit later. I wanted to a few things with the game.
Yeah, absolutely. First. Whatever you want.
One of the biggest things that frustrated me, and you kind of alluded to it, was the lack of Jacobs right away. Like Josh Jacobs that run that he had, that should have just been in the end zone. But I get it, he was down. But like that was so incredible, and what he's done, I don't feel like that was enough, especially when LaFleur should have realized pretty early on, because I feel like the rest of us did from the couch, that Love didn't have it. Like it just, I'm not gonna sit here and be one of these people that immediately went to Twitter and said like, this guy's a fraud and he cost us all. Yeah, I'm not going there, but he definitely was not playing great ball yesterday. There's no denying that.
No, absolutely not. You'd be foolhardy to see that performance and think like, oh yeah, this was fine.
Yeah,
he has to be better if this team is going to get out of the NFC North, first of all, with the title again. And if the Packers want any chance to push forward moving forward. So you're right. I mean, he was missing a lot of balls. His passes were inaccurate. I didn't really get this, and I don't know how much. It'd probably be up to like an inside source, but I wonder if like 3 separate injuries to his body just has taken more of a toll than we realize. I'd be really curious. Yes, his elbow was fine, but was it really? Is that why he was in shotgun? Because they just wanted him to be able to like make his reads and just like distribute the ball. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I think maybe I'm selfishly hoping there's some injury stuff that was keeping his performance down. But it's either he's like the second half of 2023, or he's like 2024 Jordan Love, which was fine. He's a good quarterback, or to a pretty good quarterback, honestly. I don't know if he's playing like that is not going to make you a top 10 quarterback in this league, and that's the problem, right? And so we paid him like he was going to be a top 10 quarterback. So, look,
I want to get into more just locking in on Jordan Love and his season and everything. But specifically in this game, I think you're right. I think you're right that he wasn't right. Something was not right health-wise with Jordan Love. I don't think he was 100%. I think that honestly we should have figured that. I also don't think Malik was. So I don't think even if you had Malik at 100% that was the option to go with. But that made me even more frustrated that then there weren't more of that schematic, come on, LaFleur, get some open looks to Jacobs, like play the game. Play the game if you know that Love's not 100%. And it didn't seem like he did that. Or if this was his game plan, then maybe there's some truth to we got to start analyzing LaFleur a little bit differently than we did. I'm not saying that he did like that. I wasn't there, right? I don't know what the game plan was throughout the week before the game, but I'm saying if they were aware that that Jordan Love was not where he needed to be, but he was still their best option, and then they threw him, they threw out that game plan that we saw, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that's the best you came up with when you knew you had Jacobs. As the game went on, obviously they had more struggles, more injuries. I mean, when Romeo got hit, that was terrifying. And they just were losing guys left and right. Obviously, when Elton Jenkins went down, that was huge for them. So
they brought out Glover, and he got benched after some pretty pathetic drives. I was seeing a bunch of stuff. I want to make the offensive line isn't bad. Brian Gutekunst is not a bad GM. I'm seeing weird takes about the line and how it wasn't good enough. You had drafted Jordan Morgan, who was projected to be a tackle, could absolutely move inside, 2 beers, swing, offensive lineman, he goes out. You bring in a guy on a vet minimum contract with basically nothing to be a backup guard if you need him in Andre Dillard. They're both out. Losing your left guard specifically probably was worst case scenario for this line. I see people be saying like, we got to draft all this. And it's like, they're going to draft linemen in the draft no matter what. But like, to your point about the game, like the Eagles defense is really good. Their line is really great. And to just have to throw out a 6'6" tackle to play left guard, who's not a starting caliber player in the league, is always going to spell disaster. And it's unfortunate too, because it's heading into the playoffs. Was there a better guy out there? I don't know. You know, I think at this point I was saying to somebody, we were just kind of talking about the game, and I was like, you know, I've out of all the position groups on the Green Bay Packers, I am not about to question how they feel about this offensive line, how they make personnel decisions. It's been one of the like top 5 best offensive lines in like 9 out of the last 10 years. There was, I think, one like really bad season like 6 years ago. And otherwise they've been, you know, at the top of the league. And, you know, but yeah, that was tough. I mean, that's going to be tough. You know, they use their guards a lot in a lot of their run plays. And so all of a sudden you're not getting your big guys out in the secondary level on linebackers as quickly. So it just made it for a tough game. I mean, you know, I would say, I feel like, you know, Jordan Love, I feel like he did okay against their pressure. I mean, there was a couple. Nolan had two sacks, and they were both against like Zach Tom. He took Zach Tom's lunch money. That's another really disappointing thing. Like, we're talking about what we think to be a Pro Bowl caliber right tackle, and Nolan Smith just kind of got him on flat-footed, and then just kind of went in onside on both times, and just kind of really embarrassed him. So I don't know. I think I hear a lot of conversations. To the eye, it looked like this team was not ready for this moment, and you go, that's coaching. But it still comes down to like, and I know you've said that, like, at what point does this young team just become either good or just not the right players? Mm-hmm. But these are the moments where you can tell whether these guys mean to or not. They're absolutely shrinking. They're shrinking in these moments. Like, you can't tell me all of these false starts, all of the holding, the ticky-tacky, unlike sportsman-like conduct stuff on the sidelines. Like, it's just like uncomposed football. And yeah, I think it has to do with age. I think discipline is a part of it. I think there's a lot of talk about accountability, but at what point are you actually pulling guys to like prove the point? You know what I mean? You know, Matt LaFleur.
That's why I've said some of it's got to be coaching.
Yeah.
You can't sit here. I'm not even saying it's all on LaFleur. I am not going to be a person that's sitting here today and saying after this game that anyone needs to be necessarily let go. If I was going to go one way, I think special teams.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That is one for sure. I would say Rich Bisaccia
has coached his last game as special teams.
I hope so. I hope he's happy to just take an assistant head coach position. Cause like, we paid him. He's the highest paid special teams coordinator in the league. PFF just ranked us as 32nd in the NFL in special teams. And think about how, and it's not even necessarily returning. I think people think of special teams, they think of like our offensive return. Yeah. I mean, if we did not have Daniel Whelan, we would have gotten gashed so many. We probably would have given up, at least 2 or 3 more punt returns for touchdowns, because that unit is terrible. And, you know, 3 years ago when they brought in Rich Bisaccia, there was this conversation where it's like, our special teams unit is too important. It's 1/3 of, you know, the ball, or like, you know, the program. And so we can't just keep shoving second string talent on special teams. But it's like, okay, Rich, you've had 3 years to draft your guys. You brought in a few studs, all but one left, and now he doesn't want to return. Whatever, we don't have to talk about that right now. But my point is, like, we changed the philosophy. We started drafting special teams players. We pursued special team players, and it didn't amount to anything.
Nothing.
It did not improve in the slightest. Last year, when we were like, oh, it was pretty good, 16, 17, still not good enough. So, you know, you pay
it just was better than last.
Yeah. Yep.
We're like, okay,
you know,
that's improvement. We expected it to keep improving.
Yeah.
Right. It was all right this year. Now we're middle of the pack. Now, if we can get like top 10, okay, now we're doing something. And then it completely regressed.
Yeah.
So
do I think potentially the kickoff return really kind of like also probably fumbled their plans. Do I think they would have paid Rich Bisaccia all this money if they knew they were going to? Maybe not, but that's not the world we live in. You know, if ifs and buts were
Right.
candy and nuts.
Everyone had to deal with the same thing at the same time.
Right. Absolutely. You know, so, I mean, Rich should get fired alone off the strength of just letting Keyshawn take it out as many times as he did this year, because he never got it back out to the 25. I mean, you look at what happened in obviously the fumble, terrible tone setter, you know. Could that game have gone differently if we didn't? Honestly, probably not. I don't think that game goes much differently.
Yeah. I don't think that's
think
a really important point that you just made, though.
Yeah.
Because I feel like so many people are like, you know, any people who are blaming the refs, any people who are blaming special teams, both, you're saying no. you take away both of those faults, this team probably still loses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think a very important key point to make about this game is that there were so many things going against the Packers in this game. So many things. And the biggest thing was the offense. Despite the penalties, despite the fumble, it's still the offense not being able to get anything done. Jordan Love couldn't get anything done, and then he kept losing guys to throw it to. I mean, at one point you're going, okay, so he's got Heath and Melton, right? He can throw it to them, and then Wicks. That's right.
I think Tucker. I wish Tucker would have had a bigger part in this game. I don't understand.
Well, he tried. He was in the end zone.
It wasn't his effort, you know.
He was
Musgraves,
like, throw me the ball.
Musgraves see a single snap? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So,
but did you see that when they showed Musgraves in the middle of the end zone and Love missed him? Like completely missed him.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's bad. I just like I'm looking at the game through the lens of what we talked about before the start of this game when we were talking about like what are the three things the Packers are. I think we named 5 things between the two of us, and I think all 5 things went wrong. I think literally everything we said can't happen absolutely happened during that game. So it really was like, and I think the reason why we were so spot on is because this team kind of showed us that they were going to do these things. You know, it's not
it was not the first time we saw it.
Yeah. It's not like Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions in the first 3 quarters of the game when it was still competitive. I mean, he threw 2 in the competitive parts of the game. I mean, ultimately the Eagles still only put up 22, you know, as much as
was the highlight,
as the defense played really, really well. Truthfully, to get Quay Walker back and Evan Williams back, you know, I think Rashawn Gary finally showed up. You know, we talked about this, like you can't look at sacks particularly in this game, but man, they need to figure out a different combination of guys on that line because
the pass rush was still miserable.
Yeah, the pass rush was rough. He's in the pocket. He's scanning. We are doing nothing to affect him. There's a difference between gap integrity, staying in your lane so he can't scramble, and flat out giving him 6.7 seconds to throw the football, like tied for like next gen stats for the longest drop back in like NFL history. It's like that's the kind of stuff. You can't go from fumble to 2 plays later giving up an all-time historic bad pass rush. But I think ultimately the defense, besides the defensive line, played really well. I mean, Carrington Valentine, obviously, I think he made a business decision by not really trying to tackle Dallas Goedert that hard. But to his credit, Dallas Goedert will do that to almost every single cornerback he faces. The dude's an absolute monster. He's like Tucker Kraft, and I'm pretty sure they're both from South Dakota State, if I'm remembering correctly.
He might be.
I think he is. Anyways, point being, like, people are like, I can't believe that happened. I thought he was a cornerback. It's like, he is a cornerback. You realize he tried to tackle somebody who's the same size as a right tackle? Like, there's context here, you know? So I'm not going to sit here and say the defense was the problem. I was pleasantly surprised with Hafley. Say what you want. We all thought he was going to play more man, I think, this season. Ultimately, that's not how it works. That wouldn't have worked in this game. Are you telling me Carrington Valentine or Keyshawn Nixon was going to be able to shut down AJ Brown? Right? AJ Brown? Why? That doesn't sound right. Yeah. Sorry. Man, straight up, I don't think so. Are you telling me one of our guys is fast enough to trail Devonta Smith across? No, I don't think so. So, you know, zone exists. It happens in this league, and it's like, it's very popular for a reason. I like the simulated pressures. I think Edgerrin Cooper still flashed in a lot of ways. Javon Bullard had that incredible, first 3 and out, the Eagles went out, you know, they did that swing pass to Saquon, and Javon used his hands and he fought through that blocker and brought him down. So it's like, you talk about like, who would have thought when you put your box safety in the box, he's able to do good things, you know? So getting Williams back was huge. So I think I feel overall very positive about the defense going into next year. I think there needs to probably be a sobering conversation about like what
All
do we
right.
do with the line. But
So here's why I, as someone who has anxiety, worries about next year and this defense. Okay. Because this year I expected our offense to be elite.
yeah,
I saw this young talent just smash teams on the way to almost the freaking Super Bowl, being the youngest team ever. And then things, I mean, this wide receiving core like led the league in drop passes, and
yep.
things just kept going. So it really is a year-to-year league, and it's impossible. As a realistic fan, I'm not going to sit here and say I expect this defense to come out and be just as good as it was last year. It might be, but I'm not going to bank on that. That was the other thing that we went through. If you think about, is just you need to have everything working at the same time. That was the problem that we went through through the Rodgers years. Is that Rodgers would come out and he'd put up 45 points and they'd lose 48-45. And so you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, I saw you interacting with somebody on X talking about some nonsense after some Aaron Rodgers appreciation post.
Yeah, someone put out a post being like, y'all owe Aaron Rodgers an apology, for saying that we need to move on from him and that you want to go to Jordan Love, and you guys didn't appreciate what he did. I was like, I feel like we appreciated it just fine. Like we definitely said we have the best quarterback in the league. I spent a lot of years saying he's better than Tom Brady. Like I spent a lot of time. I don't feel like I say that if I don't appreciate him as my quarterback. It was during those times that I was complaining about the defense. Now, and at the end of his run here,
defense did enough. The defense did enough.
Rodgers,
you're telling me three interceptions against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you produce 0 points off that 49ers game where you're driving and you just laser in on Devontae Adams and you don't try any other. So it's just like, I don't know. The thing I'm taking exception with around this conversation is people are like, this team doesn't have it. It's like, well, the team isn't set up to have it yet. You know what I mean? Like all we've been doing is shedding contracts and dead cap money. What I mean by that is when you're a team that thinks you can compete for a Super Bowl, you draft, you develop, and you bring in talent to fill needs. And I know you're going to say we brought in X and we brought in Josh Jacobs, but Josh Jacobs is an equal replacement to Aaron Jones at the start of this year. And we found out that he did more in the more specific ways we needed. And Xavier McKinney is a freak signing. That's awesome. Don't get me wrong. Most teams make those plays. It's awesome. Packers did. What I mean, from a cap flexibility standpoint, this is the first year since they got rid of Aaron Rodgers where they'll actually be able to make real moves in the offseason in terms of free agency if they want to, via Ken Ingalls. I'm going to drop a little fun little nugget here. He's we know Ken. You said you love Ken. So do I. He's the cap guru guy. Yeah. He's the capologist on X and Blue Sky. He said, and it's true, they have the ability to sign or acquire any veteran contract they want to, including T. Higgins, all these massive contracts. They literally do because they can create, and his quotes, not mine, so sorry for the explicit, a shit ton of cap space with one afternoon of paperwork. Over $51 million they can free up in simple veteran can kicking. You know how they used to always say it with Rodgers, we're converting signing years into signing bonuses, getting money off the cap. That cranks up almost to $74 million if they add void years to contracts. So they really are in a position when we were talking about it, and this is what I kept trying to remind people, is that 2025 was always the championship window. They were never going to push their chips all in on a team when they still had dead cap hits from Aaron Rodgers and David Bakhtiari. And Zadarius Smith, and you know what I mean? And so now that these are clearing off the books, they're fully off the books starting next year. So you can't, you can have your complaints about this team and you can say there's things they need to improve. Of course they did. They just got bounced out of the playoffs. They only got to 11 wins. Even saying that feels disingenuous because that's no small feat. Clearly, it's just we're in a very tough division. But If you think the Packers are going to stand pat and not sign anyone or improve or at least make moves on the margins to make their backups better, then you're crazy. Like Isaiah McDuffie and Eric Wilson can't be trotted out on this,
they gotta be gone.
team next year, or at least not, or buried more in the depth chart. You know what I mean? They can't be the next guys up when Quay Walker gets hurt or Edgerrin Cooper's out. It's the same thing with the cornerback room. The Jair exit is wild. He said he declined to talk because he said he didn't know. I know it's like not the game, but that kind of stuff, and you know how positive I am, those kind of responses really piss me off. It's like you don't get to like completely bail on an important part of your position, i.e. coming down and actually tackling, be as injury prone as you are, and also be a problem in terms of like the locker room and a distraction, and then do all of that and then do the pity me card when people start saying, hey, the juice ain't worth the squeeze here. Like, sorry, pal, you should feel the same way. You should be embarrassed and doing everything you can to let the Packers faithful know you're trying to get back, that it's important to you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so unimpressed by that attitude, and I just don't know how the Packers can keep them. And it's like really sad. But like,
they can't.
You can't pay a guy this much money and not know what you're going to get out of them if you're trying to contend. That's just straight up. Like, if they were a worse football team, maybe you'd live with it, but they're not, and the window starts now. So I think
so. Here's my question to you about that.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love the cap space. I know that they are going to have room for the first time in a long time. Mm-hmm. How many players, not even talking specific positions, I'm talking players, does this team need to be that contender?
Okay. Including draft guys or not including draft guys?
Let's start with not
including. I'd say 3. I think 3 comfortably. And I think it would be, and I say that thinking that they're going to have to make some decisions about rookie contracts. So Stokes is probably gone, even though he did play better. They're going to, I don't know. I don't think they can claim, unless they're team friendly contracts. I don't know how you bring back both Watson and Dobbs. I mean, Watson's like going to be a punt year. So you might, and the same thing with Josh Myers. Unfortunately he got hurt on like the penultimate game, like play of the year. It's like, it's not great. And I think both of those guys, I think Watson, if he would have never got hurt, would have absolutely been a re-sign candidate. But I think Myers, they would have let walk. And now they're both kind of meeting in this, like, hey, we need to like rehab. Now what? And so I think maybe you could get one or both of them on some younger, smaller deals, like a 1 or 2 year deal to like recoup that value. But I say all that to say, like, the wide receiver room is going to need to get bolstered even with that, because
But that's my big thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no, you're good.
Because
my answer is 5.
Okay, because you said 3 and then you went to 5, and my thing is that I agree that I think 5's the number, not including the draft picks, because we have learned that I'm not expecting perfection from rookies. I'm not going to expect this team to have guys that are going to be elite right out of college. And so looking at everything they have to do, even if you have this cap space, even if Goody now has the room to be aggressive, which I'm hearing from a ton of Packer fans of just, you guys got to give Goody more credit. He's going to go out. He's going to get these guys. He can go get T. Higgins. He could bring Adams back. He could do this. He could do that. Maybe he does a few of those. But I think we saw with the injuries that happened against the Eagles and where this team was for the last 6 weeks, that's not enough. This team needs a lot of help. I think it needs more help than a lot of people are realizing. You need the people that didn't step up this year to fucking figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's number one, is that they need to get back to how they were, a lot of them. And then 2, it's all right. So what people are now injury prone? What people are you having to replace? I don't think a lot of us thought by week 10 or 11 that Watson was going to be out, like out. That was going to be a complete loss. That we were going to have to be worrying about the wide receiver room. Ending last season, we were like, well, hey, we got a bright future with this wide receiver room. Like, that now at the end of this season, that's completely changed. Now we're saying, well, now we got to get some new guys in at receiver. That is a huge point that I don't think was being taken seriously enough. When you're looking at, you knew by week 10 that you needed to get help in the defense. They still need to get more of a pass rush. It's not like they figured all that out. So you're worrying about the secondary, you're worrying about the pass rush, you're worrying about the wide receiver room. Those are three huge areas of the team that you're expecting that they're going to just magically solve with this cap space.
Well, I'm going to hop back in again and just say real quick, the Rams just scored a touchdown with 5 seconds left. They're up 24-3 against the Vikings right now, heading into halftime. Anyways, so it's not all bad, Packers fans. It turns out being not a road being a road team is hard.
Lot of ball game left.
A lot of ball game left, but damn, Sam Darnold looks terrible, and that is hilarious to me. To your point, I agree. I said 3 originally because I think they need to attack. I think if they can get a bona fide wide receiver 1, I'm officially on the give a guy to Jordan Love. For reasons we can keep discussing in the offseason, and maybe we could do like a potential free agent thing, and I'll go into it longer. What I'll say is he needs a guy he feels comfortable with, and I feel like part of the play was that when you got when you're a master of none, jack of all trades, you're a master of none, and that's how I felt like the skill group started teetering that way,
decreasing.
Yeah. And my point about that too is we said the wide receiver room was great, but contracts are starting to get up. So now you have to have harder looks at, yes, this person's talented and we were happy to have him on this team, but are they worth paying the same amount of money for a proven veteran player who we know can produce X, Y, or Z, And so it's a little bit sobering, more of a conversation, because you're not just being high on your draft picks anymore. You're building a roster to compete for the Super Bowl starting this year because the cap was what was holding you back, right? That's what we think. I mean,
that's my point. If you're saying that this is the year, if you're saying it's 2025, I'm saying it can't be. It can't be at this point if you are expecting them to go and get these new, fresh guys. If they're going to be drafting more wide receivers to try to rebuild what they had with Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks.
It's my fault. We're getting hung up on the wide receiver room. That's my bad. I just think it's like the most interesting position in terms of like, do you keep developing these guys or do you kind of just like turn your back? I think you got to bring in a wide receiver. I think you need to bring in a cornerback, and I think you need to bring in a veteran interior defensive lineman, because while I think the edge rush has been bad, the interior defensive line, they should be getting better pressure than they are. Devontae Wyatt played well. Kenny Clark, not great this year. He eats double teams for breakfast, so he's always going to grade out well. But in terms of impact, in terms of like actually rushing the quarterback, like pretty disappointing season for Kenny.
Also, not great at math, but if he's taking 2 guys, that means there should be an opening.
I agree.
For another guy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So yeah. And I think that would be the case. I think if the defensive pass rush can get better, I think this whole season looks drastically different, because I don't think the Packers have to worry about boat racing certain opponents. A lot of the games against the better teams, we were having to put up 5 touchdowns to win. That's a tough ask for anybody in the NFL, period. Right. Especially when those teams have Vic Fangio is their defensive coordinator. What's the guy? Oh man, why I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have started with the names. The Vikings defensive coordinator and then the Lions defensive coordinator. They're all really great defenses, is my point.
Yes.
And so it doesn't really matter the personnel, a la the Lions. They are better. They're elite scheme. So so that's why I said 3. I think those are the 3 positions that need attention: cornerback, defensive line, wide receiver. And I think they'll draft to fix some of my other concerns. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't think necessarily the top end, like the offensive line has enough starting caliber talent, straight up, period. But they still need to draft guys. And the reports early out of the camp are that they have every intention of bringing Myers back and hopefully doing it before even like the free agency window hits. Like they're high on him, and he's good. He played well enough this year that it wouldn't surprise me. I just didn't think they'd want to pay top center contracts to a guy who played pretty well, but they seem to really like him. He's a good anchor. If Jordan Love likes him, like there's enough going on behind the scenes that if they want to bring him back. I don't really care, so it is what it is. He has played and dissuaded me to think otherwise. So we'll see. Hopefully Jordan Morgan, Marshawn Lloyd, there are some pieces that, injury prone pieces that could be interesting.
There were definitely injury concerns this year, and hopefully hopefully, 2025 is a better year for all of that.
Yeah.
I do want to say that with the drafting, that I think that a lot of the draft picks I think are going to be like that's not enough to be if they're starters, right? If go and get a cornerback and then draft a cornerback.
Yep.
Because otherwise you spent the money on that cornerback. The cornerback could go out. We saw it with Jair, and then you're right back to where you were this season. So it's not just about filling the roster; it's about creating the depth too.
I think that is more in line with how Goody wants to be building this roster, and I think he didn't do the signing component because of all the dead cap. You think about the years where they brought in Adrian Amos, and they drafted safeties. The same year they got Rashawn Gary, they brought in the Smith brothers, either that same year or the year right after. So they put pressure on their young guys because, like I said, these years were, let's see what we have. If we can compete, that's great. This year proved it even more. So it made them all look like geniuses in the sense that it was just like, we don't have the cap. So it's awesome. You guys played well and figured it out. So let's see what another year of that looks like. I think that's really what we were kind of like looking at. So
I want to get to the score predictions that we did as well. Because we did do
dude, we were bad. I think I don't know if we got a single game right.
But before we get to that, I want to just ask you, since we won't have a prediction for this week, my prediction is
yes, Rhea Ripley will maintain the women's championship.
Well, yeah, through WrestleMania. That's going to happen. And the fact that Raw's on, did you know that Raw's on Netflix?
Yeah, I was watching it. Did
Monday
you know
Night
that
Raw's on Netflix.
Penta made his debut? If anyone wants to hear us talk wrestling, I'd be really into it. For the record.
That well, trust me, that might happen now. The Packers season over there,
yeah,
depending on how the Bucks do. Do you think that by the next time we talk, let's not, because then we can do it again next time. Do you think either one, T. Higgins is a Packer, two, T. Higgins is something else, like with a different team, or 3-0?
Like he ceases to exist.
He's gone. He dies.
He slips into a void.
He's dead.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. By the time we talk, I think nothing will have happened because the playoffs are still going on.
Well, I don't know. Like, is it like tampering right away?
Yeah, I don't think the free agency window, I think technically, I don't know when season.
Yeah, I don't know when. I don't know when
league
they start
ends.
talking right away. Like,
I know.
I think Jacobs literally said after the game.
Well, that's not tampering. He just said he didn't name names.
People.
I do like that, but I was like, you were on the Raiders.
I mean,
unless it's Max Crosby, I don't know who you're bringing over from the Raiders.
Well, hey, NFLPA, they meet.
No, I know. You're right. You're right.
You're right.
And he played in Alabama, so he definitely knows probably 80% of
they got
the players.
Phone numbers. Okay,
I know.
They get.
Dude, I love it. I mean, I love that conversation because I don't really know. What. Our fearless 12, used to always say like people are coming here to play with me, and it's like, well, who'd you convince to come? Because it seemed like the only time was ever during like trade windows, and it sounded like
right.
I don't know. The Packers just don't operate like that. I hope
why it's so hard for me. I understand the cap and all this other stuff, but I'm so used to having a Packers team that is always a part of the conversation. They're never the buyer. We were in on T. Higgins, but they don't pull the trigger. And so I feel like a little bit of there's talks about the Packers are aggressively going to go after T. Higgins. And I'm like, yeah, because like they just ended their season 4 hours ago. And so that's what these reports are.
Yeah. They went on everybody. I mean, the Davante Adams got traction because he went on Kay Adams and just said, yeah, if a team rhymed with Schmackers, I wouldn't say no. You know what I mean? It's just like, listen, they're going to get rid of him, and crazier things have happened. Davante, if you want to come home, I'd take Davante Adams back in a heartbeat. The dude is still a weapon. He absolutely can still play. I did say in our group chat that we're talking about the wrong Jets wide receiver. I mean, if you really want to talk about taking the big swing, bring Garrett Wilson in. The guy is young. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to, but the problem is that between fantasy football and now the MLB not having a salary cap and the NBA just being a league of stars, everyone just thinks that all of this stuff is just going to happen. And it's like,
I know
good football teams don't make desperate decisions. Bringing in Davante, if he's not just outright cut, is a desperate thing that the just Packers don't do. We've experienced 30 years of greatness, 40 years of greatness because they're not a desperate football team.
Do you remember when JJ Watt became available and the amount of people that were like, come back to Wisconsin? I already got the Watt jersey in my cart. Oh my God. And I was like,
Yeah.
calm down. JJ Watt's
Yeah.
not playing football in Green Bay. Give me a break.
I mean, he chose Arizona. Listen, that one I would have loved. It made a lot of sense, but that's also because he wasn't going to get a big contract, and the Packers desperately needed him. But like I'm saying, you're telling me Aaron
Even if
Rodgers
it makes sense. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point.
No, I know. I mean, that's how
You know?
all this stuff works, though. You know,
Right. So I'm just saying, like, it's very hard for me. Oh God, I would love to see T Higgins here. Like, I love it. I'm not holding my breath.
Well, T Higgins is not a sure thing because he hasn't been a wide receiver one. He benefits off the fact that Jamar Chase is like one of the top 5 best wide receivers in the league too. It's
or
like
Adams, or I'm just saying, like, one of these guys.
yeah. I just mean there's inherent risk. Like
Jacobs
people are
and McKinney was a huge fucking deal, and it's not appreciated enough because I'm not expecting that type of caliber move from this front office every year. Like,
well,
or not.
We're lucky that we hit on the 2 most underappreciated positions in the league.
True.
Like safety is undervalued, and so is running back. And I mean, it's not like the Packers gave out a very impressive contract to get McKinney here. It's not like he chose to come here because it's highly desirable.
Because God told him to,
or because yeah. So we paid him a lot of money. We paid him a great contract to come here, and it was worth its weight. I'm just saying, like, you're right. These bigger contracts the Packers don't typically splash on. We benefited from the fact that the running back market, like you said, for an hour you thought we were going to have Aaron Jones and that great hour
and Jacobs. Yeah, God, that was a great hour.
We'll see. The offseason will be interesting. I'm really excited to nerd out about draft stuff. Like I said, I really do enjoy kind of the whole process of what that entails. So we'll see.
Going through the games, we both said the Chargers were going to win. They did not.
Wrong.
Demolished. We said the Ravens would win. We were correct.
We said both by 10. It was more than that.
Yeah. So that was good for us.
Yeah.
I said Bills. You said Bills.
You said by 3. I said by 14. Who was correct?
Yes, you were correct.
Yay.
I said that Tampa Bay was going to win. You said that the Commanders were going to win. So you were right on that one.
Yeah, and pretty close in terms of score too, right? We gave the scores. I want to see them.
We didn't give the scores. We just said
no,
we did. Minus what we did.
Yeah. I see. Well, I said I said the Ravens were going to win by 10, and so did you. We said you said the Bucks were going to win by 5. I said they were going to win by 2.
You said the Commanders were going to win by 2.
Yeah. Sorry. And then the Vikes. You had the Vikings. I had the Rams.
Yeah, I'm
looking more correct at the moment, which is awesome. So.
Yes, I agree, which is very awesome. So there you go. Turns out that football is still hard to pick. And it did suck that, tonight, or the Commanders were going to be the only wild card team to advance. I'm
not gonna lie, man. If the Packers played the way they did last night, I think the Bucks would have beat them too. That's how bad it was. I just it was just bad. And it has nothing to do with the opponent. Ultimately, the Packers
it hadn't been that way much all
year.
The
Packers are who we thought
they were.
We wish they weren't. What was that title of episode? They are who we wish they weren't. There we go.
That's right.
The Packers are who we wish they weren't. So they gotta fix that.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean, Eagles fans were still the worst. Tons of videos coming out of them being awful in the stands. So that sucks. Be better.
Yeah. And there's a video circulating of a guy calling a woman like the C word.
Yeah.
In 2020, like unprovoked.
Repeatedly. Like in her face.
Yeah. Good for that guy for not swinging on him. Because he would have gotten absolutely assaulted by everyone around him. But it's just like, that was so disgusting. It's disgusting. I hate that so much. Like, you cheer for your team, but like to be that cutting and personal,
especially when like your team is like, you be happy. Your team's winning.
At no point was that game in jeopardy for them. So
you should have been celebrating. Why are you worrying about the other fans around you? Yeah.
Hate
just
that.
awful people. So that sucked. The season is over. That super sucks. Next episode we'll do our final grades. And awards for the Packer season. We'll put a bow on it, and we'll go through that. And we'll also talk about what else is going on in the NFL as the playoffs go on. We'll get into the Bucks, which I also didn't want to talk about yet. I need a little time. Like now it's like basketball season's here.
Yeah.
Like now that the Packers are done, like now we're gonna go all in on the Bucks as well. But man, not the ending that we were hoping for, and it was kind of predictable once
Yeah.
the game started of it being the same old for this Packers team.
Yeah, I was fine. I woke up yesterday being like, they could lose this game, and that's fine. I did feel that way for real. I just didn't want it to feel like this. I didn't want this to be how it happened, where
Yeah.
they just, like I said, they tripped over their own dicks
wa-
before
yeah.
they even started. You know,
You wanted to see them. You wanted to see them put out a great performance, and then if they
Yeah.
just weren't the better team, yeah. You never want to see it to where it was their fault, and
Right.
that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So it sucks. The season's over. We move on. We do appreciate everyone who, if you were just a Packers fan and you watch us, I beg you to continue. There's more sports and more things to discuss. Here, who knows? We might even get into wrestling. That could be fun. Either way, we won't tell you how to fan. Don't tell us how to fan. We do appreciate you joining us along for this ride, and we hope you tune in next time because we are not done yet.
Bye-bye.